Hello everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Adam Whitty. I'm the founder and chief executive officer of Advantage Media Group. And today I'm going to teach you how to quickly and easily hypergrow your business and dominate any market. In today's webinar, I'm going to share with you some very important lessons. Specifically, here's what you'll learn. First, I'm going to share with you the secret to hypergrow your business. Secondly, I'm going to teach you about a fundamental marketing principle that very few entrepreneurs are aware of. It's called the law of unfair advantage. And when fully understood and comprehended, and when utilized in your business, it can be the catalyst. It can be the jet fuel that can allow you to scale your business up very quickly. Next, I'm going to share with you the top 3 unfair advantages and specifically provide case studies and examples on how you can implement these unfair advantages in your own business and for your gain. And then finally, I'm going to share with you what I call the trifecta. I'm going to share with you a quick and easy way that you can create the ultimate unfair advantage for your and in your very own business. So let's get started. I want to start with a question. I know that I'm speaking to CEOs and entrepreneurs, and so this should be an easy one for you. What is the top responsibility of the CEO? What's the top responsibility of the head of the company? Any guesses? It is the acquisition and the retention of clients and customers. Now, I'll be very honest, as a business grows, it's impossible for the CEO to be directly and intimately involved in each of these. But the only way that a business grows is through these 2 means. And business growth, I argue, is the top responsibility of the CEO. Now, there's a lesson that former President Theodore Roosevelt can teach all of us. And the most enlightened CEOs that I've ever met and come across know and emulate what the former president did well over 100 years ago. Here's what it is. They used the bully pulpit that every CEO and every head of an organization has access to. You see, Teddy Roosevelt made that term bully pulpit famous, but he was the president that realized that he had a special position as the leader of the free world. He had a position that he could demonstrate, articulate, and persuade people through his position. And if properly used, that bully pulpit can be a catalyst to accelerate the visibility and the growth of your business. Now, you're probably thinking, well, gee, Adam, I'm not the president of the United States. But you are the president or the head of your own company. And just as the president of the United States has a bully pulpit, the head of every company and every organization around the world has a bully pulpit of their own. And so the question begs, how are you using yours? I've got one more pop quiz for you. Ready? People buy people, not corporations. You see, people buy in a highly emotional state. And most savvy CEOs and entrepreneurs, they know it. They know that people buy emotionally and then justify their purchase with logic. And those enlightened CEOs, those that are the most successful, well, they know that the greater the connection they foster between their prospects and centers of influence, the better chance they have to gain a customer for their business. So just how hard is it to grow a business anyways? Well, I thought it might be fun to share some statistics with you. In the US today, there's over 28 million firms. And of those 28 million, check this, 96% will never eclipse $1 million in annual sales. That's right, 96%. Put another way, of every 100 new businesses that are started in America, only 4 exceed $1 million. Now, of the 4% that exceed $1 million, only 0.4% will ever exceed 10 million. And boy, if you're thinking 10 million's rocking and rolling, which it is, if you want to be a part of the 50 million or greater club, it's only 17,000 people. You could fit every CEO in America that has a business doing $50 million in annual sales or greater in the lower level of Yankee Stadium, and you'd still have plenty of extra room. So how hard is it to grow? Simply put, it's really hard. The purpose of the webinar today, though, is I'm going to teach you some tricks, some tips, and some practical advice that can make it a lot easier. How do you hyper grow? Simply put, you open more doors. You see, the most successful CEOs, they realize that their top responsibility is to open more doors for their business using the bully pulpit that we talked about. Entrepreneurs and CEOs that are focused on what I call hyper growth realize that the more doors they open, the more opportunities come to their business. And the more people have a chance to walk through that door and become a client or a customer. So you're probably wondering, who's that pretty beautiful face on the other side of the webinar today? Well, my mom always said I had a great face for radio, and now that you've had a chance to see me, you can probably agree with that. But I'm an entrepreneur just like you. I'm a CEO, I'm the head of a company, and I am focused on hyper growth for my business. In fact, you'll notice the book that I'm reading is aptly titled Hyper Sales Growth. Over the last decade, starting my business from scratch and building it into a multi-million-dollar organization without any banks, any investors, or any outside help, I've learned a lot the hard way. I've got that MBA from, as they call it, the School of Hard Knocks. And as I've really focused my attention on hyper growing, I've had to focus on marketing and sales. And what I've learned over the next 10 years, I want to share with you in today's webinar and illustrate specifically how it can help you hyper grow your business and dominate the market that you're in. So let's jump right into it. And I want to start with the law of unfair advantage. Now, I'm going to guess for a minute that many people probably haven't heard of this. And by many, I mean everybody. The law of unfair advantage is the secret to open more doors. You've never heard of it. And that's too bad, because the top 17,000, that's right, those CEOs who pilot businesses doing more than 50 million in annual revenues, they know what the law of unfair advantage is. Simply put, the law of unfair advantages is a unique way of organizing your thinking, communication, and action in more productive ways that competitors can neither comprehend nor copy. Now, I jumped ahead of myself, because the first thing that you should know is the essence of being a successful entrepreneur lies in creating and continually accumulating unfair advantages. But let's focus back on what is an unfair advantage. Again, it's a unique way of organizing your thinking, communication, and actions in more productive ways that competitors can neither comprehend nor copy. A few other things that I should mention about the law of unfair advantage. The greatest entrepreneurs in the world are those who have created the largest number of unfair advantages for themselves and, of course, their business, and then for others. Something else to remember is this, that there's only two things that entrepreneurs have to increasingly master: unfair advantages for themselves, and then as a result, unfair advantages for their best clients and their best customers. And finally, a fifth thing to remember about the law of unfair advantage: to build an organization with greater unfair advantages, all entrepreneurs must start by first increasing their personal unfair advantages. It only makes sense that the person with the most unfair advantages is also piloting the company with the most unfair advantages. The greatest entrepreneurs and CEOs, hands down, are those that have created the largest number of unfair advantages for themselves and for others. Now you're probably thinking, well, gee, Adam, this sounds great, but give me an example. So let me start with Herb Kelleher, that fun-loving founder and CEO of the iconic brand Southwest Airlines. Now, Herb Kelleher and his team at Southwest created a number of unique unfair advantages. And let's see if you recall any of these. First, Herb Kelleher decided he's going to fly point to point, and he's not going to have the hub and spoke model that every traditional airline has. The next unfair advantage, Herb Kelleher said, I'm going to turn a plane in 20 minutes, keeping in mind that the average traditional airline turns a plane in 45 minutes. The next thing that Herb Kelleher said is no assigned seats and no first class. Oh yeah, I'm not going to serve meals either. I'm going to serve you peanuts. And oh, by the way, I'm only going to fly one model of airplane, the Boeing 737. All of these unfair advantages accumulated into a massive unfair advantage that has allowed Southwest to lead the pack for the last 45 years. In fact, even until this day, the big dumb airlines never have been able to comprehend, and 40 years later now, still haven't been able to catch up to what Southwest has done. Well, how about another example? And I go to Mr. Jobs. Steve Jobs, the entrepreneur extraordinaire and co-founder of Apple, he created an impossible to beat number of unfair advantages when he decided he would adopt closed architecture and reinvent the way music would be purchased and shared online. And he reinvented the way that people would shop in a retail store for his products. He created the Apple Store. I bet you didn't know that the Apple stores have the highest gross sales per square foot of any retail store in the world. We're just getting started with a number of unfair advantages that Steve Jobs created. How about the iPhone? And only selling it through one carrier for the first 2 years, AT&T. He was able to lock out the rest of the market and create a massive unfair advantage for their early adaptation of the iPhone. And these are just a few of the many unfair advantages that Apple's been able to commandeer. And finally, how about Ingvar Kamprad, the entrepreneur and founder of IKEA? You see, he created game-changing unfair advantages in the furniture business. You know, conventionally, up until IKEA, everybody believed that furniture was built to last a lifetime. And he challenged that notion and said, what if furniture only lasted for chapters of your life? And as you changed from chapter to chapter, you could upgrade and change your furniture. He also challenged the notion that furniture should be assembled and delivered to your front door. Instead, he made everything flat pack so you could come to his superstore and pick it up yourself. Just a few of the unfair advantages that have made IKEA a dominant force in the furniture industry. Okay, I know what you're thinking. I'm not Herb Kelleher. I'm not Steve Jobs. and I'm not Ingvar Kamprad. That's fair enough. So how about John Patrick Dolan? John is the CEO and managing partner of a criminal defense firm in Southern California, the Dolan Law Offices. Now, if you open up the phone book and look up criminal defense law in Southern California, what you'll find is that there's well over 100 other firms that compete with him in just a 50-mile radius. John Dolan created an unfair advantage when he wrote the book titled Negotiate Like the Pros, which he's since turned into a series of 5 other books. You see, this book, and I should really say books, established John as the number one authority on negotiation. Now, the other unfair advantage that John Dolan created for himself, when he had the book, he immediately started sending it to executive producers of major news shows. And you see, what sprinkled fuel on John's unfair advantage is the producers at CNN and MSNBC and Fox News and Court TV. They all called. And they all wanted him to come on their show and appear as a legal commentator. To this day, John Patrick Dolan appears on major cable television almost weekly. And every time he's on the show, he's introduced as author of Negotiate Like the Pros. With all of these TV appearances, as you can imagine, John's phone rings off the hook. His firm is able to cherry pick the cases they want and simply pass on the rest. John has fundamentally created the unfair advantage of authority, of celebrity, of expert, which has dramatically differentiated himself from every other criminal defense law firm in the region. And think about it. If you're in need of a criminal defense attorney, do you want the guy in the phone book, or do you want the guy that's on TV every other day? Now, let's talk about how to create unfair advantages for your business now that you've got the concept. And I want to start with what I call unfair advantage number 1, which is the line of super credibility. The line of super credibility. Every single person watching today's webinar, every professional that I know of has some level of credibility, though certainly some have higher levels than others. Now, what gives you credibility? Well, first and foremost, time. The more experience that you have, the more credible you become. If you were to go see a doctor, would you rather see the doctor who's just out of his residency and this is his first year as a practicing physician? Or would you rather see the physician that's been in practice for over 30 years? You see, most people equate experience with credibility. But there's a lot of other things that create credibility for entrepreneurs. Past achievements, awards that we've received, designations, activities that we've participated in. What might some of those examples be? If you're a financial advisor or wealth manager, having the designation CFP, which stands for Certified Financial Planner, there's credibility. If you've made the Inc. 500 list or the Inc. 30 under 30, or if your business is on the Fortune 500 list, those would all be some pretty impressive designations. If you're the chairman of a nonprofit, perhaps the United Way, if you've been the number one pace setter in your company in sales for the last 5 years in a row, those might be achievements. All of those things together give you credibility as a person and certainly as an entrepreneur. Now, the problem is that your competition has oftentimes the same level of credibility or sometimes even higher. And so in order to create a massive unfair advantage, you've got to achieve what we call the line of super credibility. Now, I want you to remember that building credibility is a marathon, it's not a sprint. And credibility oftentimes comes one piece at a time. It usually takes a really long time. And so what is something that can literally add jet fuel to your credibility? Well, how about this story? Tim Ferriss is probably a name that you all know, the author of The 4-Hour Workweek. Now, prior to the publication of this book, Tim Ferriss, at least publicly, was not a known quantity. Tim had achieved success in his entrepreneurial business. He had many awards that he had received. And Tim, by all sense of the imagination and by all appearances, had significant credibility. But when Tim Ferriss decided to write a book titled The 4-Hour Workweek, he instantaneously received super credibility. He became an authority figure, a celebrity to many, and an expert. After his book tour, Tim Ferriss was regularly receiving invitations to be a keynote speaker at conferences and events, with speaking fees in excess of $20,000. On an almost weekly basis, Tim Ferriss was appearing on major business news networks, CNBC, Fox Business, CNN. And what Tim Ferriss was able to do was achieve a level of super credibility that far outdistanced any of his peers. Another example is Charlie Epstein. Now, the title of this slide, How to Beat a Giant, literally and figuratively. Charlie Epstein is a financial advisor, the CEO of Epstein Financial Group based out of Massachusetts. And Charlie's known as the 401k coach because he specializes in working with businesses to create and nurture a 401k plan for the company's employees. Well, about 7 months ago, a gentleman who is not a financial advisor decided he was going to write a book on investing. That guy is Tony Robbins. And because of his super credibility, his book, Money, Master the Game, immediately hit the New York Times bestseller list. And what Charlie found is as he would sit down to meet with prospects, they would say, well, what do you think about what Tony had to say? You can imagine Charlie being flabbergasted. The man's not even a financial planner. What does he know about investing? But the way that Charlie Epstein competed with and ultimately beat the giant is whenever a prospect would ask a question, Charlie would simply autograph and slide a copy of his book, Paychecks for Life, right across the table. As soon as the prospect realized that Charlie was a published author, the level of credibility that Charlie had immediately went up, and now he was on par with the perceived credibility of Tony Robbins. You see, super credibility, it matters. Super credibility comes to authorities and celebrities and experts. And the truth is that being the author of a best-selling book is a sure way to achieve super credibility. When you have super credibility, you and your business become a magnet for opportunity. You and your business outflank and distance yourself from any competition. You and your business command premium fees and position yourself in the premium category of your business. And most importantly, you and your business beat the giants of your industry. Now, I want to tell you about Jennifer Nicole Lee. Jennifer is an Advantage Entrepreneur client, and she's a fitness model. Now, the truth is, there's tens of thousands of fitness models in America that are all waiting for their big break. And what Jennifer did to create her level of super credibility was she wrote 2 books. The first was the Jennifer Nicole Lee Fitness Model Diet. The second was the Fun Fit Foodie Cookbook. Now, the secret isn't in just creating the book. The secret is then using the book to build your super credibility. And what Jennifer did was very, very smart. There's a number of entrepreneurs in America that make their living creating gadgets, gizmos, and devices to be sold on TV. The Home Shopping Network is the largest TV channel in America that promotes and sells those said gizmos and gadgets. Well, as you can imagine, and as I'm sure you've seen flipping through the channels, the Home Shopping Network has a lot of exercise equipment. Jennifer mailed copies of her book to the inventors who were creating these gizmos and gadgets for the Home Shopping Network. And when one said inventor saw her books, he immediately called her, brought her into his shop, and she was the perfect person to be the Abs Circle Pro spokeswoman. For the last 5 years, Jennifer Nicole Lee has been on the Home Shopping Network 4 days a month, telling you how you can create killer abs with the Abs Circle Pro. Now, the best part for Jennifer is not only the royalty stream by being the spokesperson of the #1 selling fitness equipment in the country has done, but it's also elevated her brand and opened up far more doors of opportunity for her. But it started when she created a high level of super credibility, which opened door after door after door. Unfair advantage number 2. Let's talk about what I call the acceleration of trust. Advantage authors and entrepreneur clients Matt Zagula and Dan Kennedy authored a book a few years back titled Creating Trust in an Understandably Untrusting World. And the premise of the book was simple. The transfer of trust from prospect to company is the most important part to making a sale, but it's also the most difficult. The book went on to explain that in today's new competitive economy, the levels of trust consumers have in businesses, government, institutions, well, simply put, it's never been at a lower level. The authors argue in the book that if you can create the unfair advantage of being seen as more trustworthy than your competition, you win the business. Another book was recently written by Stephen M.R. Covey, a name that most of you probably recognize. The book was aptly titled The Speed of Trust. And in the book, the author makes a similar argument. And he says that establishing trust is the one thing that can literally change everything. So what does high trust look like, and what does low trust look like? And really, does trust matter? I'll let you be the judge. When you have high trust, you are seen as a trusted advisor. Low trust means you're a salesperson. When you convey high levels of trust, you're seen as a welcome guest. Low levels of trust make you an unwanted pest. Shoo, get away. High trust, your prospects and clients willingly take your recommendations. When there's a low level of trust, people are skeptical of the claims that you make and feel a need to verify it outside. High trust results in shorter sales cycles. Low trust, longer sales cycles. With high trust, your prospects are doing limited to no comparison shopping. They take you and your company for your word. They see your solution as appropriate, and they don't even check it out against anything. But when you have low levels of trust, it's often and common that the prospect wants to do a apples to apples comparison. They want to shop you around. With high levels of trust, your prospects and clients ultimately purchase on the value you provide. When there's low levels of trust, your clients and prospects are purchasing primarily on low price. If I were to ask you Do you have a high level of trust in your family physician? Most people would say, absolutely. If I then asked, do you have a high level of trust in a used car salesman? People would say, heck no. Does trust matter? Absolutely. In fact, trust can be the one thing that gives you an unfair advantage over everyone else. The quicker you can accelerate trust between you and your business and others, it's a game changer. When you have super credibility, when you are a best-selling author, you and your business accelerate the speed at which trust is built with prospects. And here's the big idea. When you accelerate trust, you speed your sales cycle and dramatically improve the lift of every marketing dollar that you invest. Because the marketing dollars you invest into the marketplace are designed to inspire trust that prospects have in you. When you feature your trust accelerating book in your marketing, as many of our entrepreneur clients do, you can double, you can triple, and you can even quadruple the response rates and the effectiveness of the marketing you're doing. Nate DePore is the founder and CEO of Charleston-based People Matter, a software as a service company. And People Matter, oh boy, they're hyper growing to the tune that they've raised over $70 million in venture capital. And Nate DePore, the CEO of the business, decided he was going to create a book aptly titled People Matter. One of the stories he shared with me was absolutely priceless. People Matter was vying for a client that was a national, well-known restaurant chain. They had well over 500 locations. And Nate was hoping to get the People Matter software in each one of those 500 locations. This national restaurant chain had an RFP. And People Matter made it to the second to last round, but got cut. Nate's instincts kicked in, and he got a copy of his book. He inscribed a personal note on the front cover to the chief people officer and quickly FedExed a copy of the book to that woman. When she got the book and read through it, she was so impressed, she decided to let People Matter back in the RFP. And it turns out that People Matter ended up winning that RFP. And today, the Texas Roadhouse chain is a 7-figure customer to People Matter because the book was the trust factor that changed everything. Another great story comes from Advantage entrepreneur client John Bly. John Bly is the founder and CEO of the largest independent accounting firm in the state of North Carolina. And John specializes in mergers and acquisitions. John decided he'd write a book titled Cracking the Code, an entrepreneur's guide to growing your business through mergers and acquisitions for pennies on the dollar. And John did something very unconventional. He mailed a copy of his book to every independent accounting firm in the state of North Carolina. He mailed a copy of his book to his competition. Well, it just so happens that one of the competitors was interested in selling his firm. John immediately created a line of super credibility, and he accelerated the amount of trust that this person had in John just through his book. That entrepreneur ended up merging his company with John's. John was able to add an extra $4 million of top-line revenue to his accounting firm, all from the book. The last principle I want to share with you is what I call the magnet principle. This is unfair advantage number 3. Have you ever been offshore fishing for blue marlin? By the way, blue marlin are one of the most difficult saltwater fish to catch in the world. some blue marlin can weigh as much as 600 pounds. Now, I live in Charleston, South Carolina, and I am a fisherman. And catching a blue marlin is the coveted creme de la creme of offshore fishing. And to catch one, it requires a magnet. Really? For offshore blue marlin fishing, you're probably thinking? Well, so to speak. Let me ask you this question. If I gave you an option to catch blue marlin fish with either a precisely tuned rod with the exact bait that blue marlin prefer, or a large net that you'd simply cast to the side of the boat, would you choose the rod or the net? Well, I hope you don't fish with a net, because if you do, you're not going to be coming with me. You're probably saying, Adam, what in the world does blue marlin fishing have to do with growing your business? And as it turns out, it has everything. You see, to hyper grow your business, you've got to catch your share of blue marlin, whether that be clients and customers, all-star employees, publicity and media, or maybe even speaking opportunities. You see, most entrepreneurs and CEOs, they're fishing every day for new customers, for new employees, for visibility and publicity for their business. And usually what they're doing is throwing an old, worn-out net into the ocean, hoping they might pull in something good. And instead, what they get are minnows and debris. To fix this problem, you've got to become a magnet for opportunity. You've got to become a magnet that attracts your ideal prospects, a magnet for all-star employees, a magnet to the media so journalists want to interview you and meeting planners want to invite you onto their stage. Tara Kennedy Klein is a consultant for families with children of disability. And Tara's a pretty good consultant because she's lived through it herself. Her son, Jordan, has Asperger's syndrome, which is very similar to autism. Tara decided that she was going to write a book on the topic titled Stop Raising Einstein. The executive producer of the NBC Today Show, who was doing a story on autism, saw the book, and Tara immediately became a magnet for that executive producer. The result? A 7-minute featured story on the Today Show. As a result, Tara's phone was ringing off the hook for weeks. It catapulted and grew her speaking and consulting business like nothing that you could possibly imagine. Jack Daly is an entrepreneur and a speaker. Having successfully sold 6 businesses, one which was number 10 on the Inc. 500 list, 2 businesses which Jack sold to Wall Street. Over the last 5 years, he's made a career as one of the top speakers on the subject of sales. In fact, Jack speaks over 120 times per year at a full fee, an average of $20,000 per engagement. Jack Daly had credibility. He was already a magnet for opportunity. He had the unfair advantages that his competition did not. But you know what I found about the best? They have a relentless pursuit to keep getting better. The mediocre, they usually just tread water. And Jack Daly was looking for the next big thing that could help take his speaking career to another level. Enter Jack's book, Hyper Sales Growth. The week it came out, Jack got a phone call. It was a meeting planner from a man in Mexico City who was planning a conference of 7,500, that's right, 7,500 entrepreneurs. And he wanted Jack to be the opening keynote speaker. I remember when Jack called me, he said, Adam, I've got to admit, I was skeptical at first. I had a booked schedule. I was getting my maximum fee. I really didn't think I could do any better. And the book has become a magnet. 7,500 people. Before this, the largest event I ever spoke at was 2,000. It wouldn't have happened without the book. And you see, this is just one of the many ways that the book has made Jack a magnet. More keynote speeches, more media appearances, more people that want to hire him to be a coach to their sales executives. What are you fishing with? A finely tuned rod with the perfect bait? Or are you throwing a big net out in the ocean hoping that you might get something great in return? The trifecta. We've now talked about 3 unfair advantages, so what would happen if we could tie them all together? Here's what we've learned so far. You've got to have super credibility. You've got to be seen as more trustworthy than competitors. And you must be a magnet for opportunity. Doing those 3 things creates tremendous unfair advantage for you and your business. And how do you do it? By being the professionally published author of a book. Now, I'm not just the founder and CEO of the company, I'm also a customer. You see, I myself am the author of 7 books, my 3 most recent on screen now. And you see, I eat my own dog food, and I can tell you unequivocally that being the author of a book, in this case books, has done more to raise my visibility, make me more trustworthy, and convey that upon my business and be a magnet than anything else. You see, by being the author of these books, I and my business are seen as the authority on the topic, the first place to turn and go to. And we have the super credibility that no one competing in our space can even hope to compete and vie for. Over the last decade, we've created massive unfair advantages for over 650 entrepreneurs and CEOs around the globe. And what you see are just a small portion of some of the books that we've created for them. With 650 published authors around the globe in 40 US states and 13 foreign countries, you might be wondering, well, gee, Adam, how do you create a book? Is it even possible to do? Seems awfully hard to me. So I want to share with you how you can create a massive unfair advantage in your business by being a professionally published author. Now, you can write the book yourself, you can hire a ghostwriter, or you can consider what I call the advantage way. What does it take to write a book yourself? The average nonfiction business author will invest about 250 hours of their time creating a book. Now, this is a pretty bright group, and I know that you guys are all leaders of business and your time is worth a lot. So if we were to assume for just a minute that your time was worth $250 an hour, the opportunity cost to write a book on your own would be about $62,500. That's not the worst part. The worst part is that according to the American Association of Publishers, the average nonfiction business author will take 3.2 years from the first writing to the final draft of the manuscript. My goal here is to teach you how to implement quickly and easily unfair advantages so you can grow your business and dominate your market. And spending 3.2 years to write a book is not the way to do that. So how about a ghostwriter? What does it normally cost to have a book written for you? Well, it depends, and it depends on a lot of things. But for a competent ghostwriter, you're probably looking at an investment on the low end of about $20,000 to the high end of $100,000. Now, remember, you do get what you pay for, and it's very important that you verify the credentials of the ghostwriter that you might hire. The other thing with ghostwriting is it can take a good bit of your time, so you have to factor that in on the front end. There has to be a better way, though. By the time you write the book yourself and self-publish it, it can get awfully expensive. The average entrepreneur that self-publishes a book themselves will invest $31,000 into the process. And unfortunately, there's a negative stigma that goes with self-publishing. If you write the book yourself and publish it yourself, you could invest upwards of $80,000 and more. With a ghostwriter, the most common complaint we hear is, the book doesn't sound like me. Well, of course it doesn't sound like you. You didn't write it. So that's something that you've got to be very careful about. But even with the ghostwriting option, it can be very expensive as well. $50,000 to $100,000 or more. There's got to be a better way. And 10 years ago, we pioneered a better way because of the problems that business professionals had in creating books. The idea was this: could we and how create for you a book in less than 24 hours? Well, the answer is we could, and I'm about to tell you how. And could we make it completely done for you? The answer is yes. We crafted and created a proprietary method called Talk Your Book. And with Talk Your Book, you speak and we write. In less than 24 hours of your time, our professional editorial team interviews you and turns about 10 hours of interviews, all done over the phone in the comfort of your home or office, into a professionally published 150-page business book. Those other 9 hours, 10 hours that you might invest with us, that's going to be on the fun stuff like cover design, reviewing the manuscript, and talking about the marketing. In less than 24 hours of your time, but in truth about 250 hours of ours, we can create your book for you. The Advantage way is simple. We create a blueprint for your book. Following that blueprint, you talk your book. Once the manuscript is created, we publish your book and distribute it amongst other books in bookstores, online outlets all across the country. And then finally, most importantly, we help you market your book to create massive unfair advantages and to hyper-grow your business. The Advantage way, which is turnkey and soup to nuts, is a fraction of the investment that it would take for you to do this on your own. Advantage authors invest as little as $30,000 to $35,000 to have all this done. And the best part is that we can have a professionally published book on Amazon.com and in your hands in less than 120 days. Now, I want to teach you two things that every author must do. And this is important to write down. Whether you create a book with Advantage, write it yourself, or do it in some other form or fashion, there's two things I want you to take away. The first is this, that before you think about writing a single word, I want you to first create the marketing plan for your book. Begin with the end in mind, as Stephen Covey said, rule number 2 in the 7 habits of highly effective people. And you see, creating a 2-page marketing plan allows you to see the big picture, strategically to figure out how the book falls into your business. I want you to think through the title, the subtitle, and even maybe write the back cover copy. I want you to answer the question, if after my book comes out, somebody says to me, has it been successful? Was it worth doing? what are the measuring sticks that you'll use to determine success? Think through those things. Ask yourself those questions. And before anything, a 2-page book marketing plan is a must. Begin with the end in mind before you write a single word. The second thing that every author must do first is they must create a blueprint. You see, building a house is very similar to building a book. If you were building your dream house, you wouldn't hire an architect. If you were building a dream house, you wouldn't simply hire a general contractor and simply say build. If you came back in 6 months, it wouldn't be the house that you had envisioned. Instead, to build that dream house, you want to first hire an architect, carefully create blueprints that you deliver to the contractor, and then in 6 months, that dream house that the contractor has built is exactly as you had envisioned. Building a book is very similar to building a house. Before you write a single word, you must create a detailed outline, a blueprint for the book, so you know what you're writing about. Your ghostwriter knows what to talk to you about. If you do these 2 things first, it'll make the rest of it easy. Prepare hard to finish easy. Now, the biggest mistake that any entrepreneur can make when creating a book is this: cutting corners. You see, if your book looks like what you might see on your screen right now, well, you just hurt your credibility. You just broke down trust between prospects. You just became a worn-out fishing net, trolling through the ocean hoping to get something. You see, just as a book can build and help your business and create massive unfair advantages, it can also create disadvantages if you cut corners and don't do it right. Whatever you do, make sure that the book that you create looks and reads as good as any you'd find on the front table at a major bookstore. So that's it. That's the presentation. I wanted to share with you marketing secrets that are known by the top 17,000 CEOs in America. Yep, those guys and gals that are piloting businesses doing $50 million in revenue or greater. And hopefully along the way, you've not only gained some practical insights, but maybe you've become inspired too. And if you could see yourself as a professionally published author, if you could see a book creating multiple unfair advantages to hypergrow your business, I want to provide a couple of resources for you. First, if you're interested in creating a book for your business on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being I absolutely want to do this, and 1 being I can hardly wait until this webinar is over. If your interest is a scale of 1 to 4 on that 1 to 10 scale, at the worst you probably want to request a free copy of my best-selling book titled Book the Business. And you'll see a button right now that you can click on to do just that. If your level of interest is a 5, a 6, or a 7, then it might be worth at least requesting a complimentary, no obligation discovery call where you can explore your idea for a book in more detail. If you want to do that, you'll see a button that appears right now, and you can just click on that and request a discovery call. If your interest level in becoming a professionally published author is an 8, a 9, or a 10, well, you're ready to at least put a poker chip on the table. You're ready to at least take a first step to explore the idea a little bit more. And after you explore the idea a little bit more, you may decide it's absolutely something you must do, or no way, this is something I shouldn't do. The first step that any prospective author takes in working with Advantage is something called the Fast Start Author Program. And the Fast Start Author Program is designed to create clarity for authors, to give them an idea of specifically what their book's going to be about, specifically the business objectives it's going to fulfill, and to create a plan on how it all becomes a reality. The Fast Start Author Program also accomplishes those two things that every author must do first. The first is that 2-page book marketing plan. And that's the first step of the Fast Start. Every Fast Start Author Program entrepreneur will have a 2-page book marketing plan created for their book and for their business. We have a team of ROI guides who will sit with you by phone, ask really intelligent questions, and gain insight and understanding to craft a big picture plan of how your book helps hypergrow your business so you can dominate your market. The second piece of the Fast Start Author Program is that blueprint that I mentioned earlier. Now, you may decide to write the book yourself. You may decide to hire a ghostwriter. Or even if Advantage is a fit, you might decide our Talk Your Book program makes sense. Either way, you'll need that blueprint to get started. We have a team of professional editors with gold-plated credentials who have worked for the likes of the New York Times and Penguin and Time and GQ and Bloomberg and Simon & Schuster, just to name a few. These gold-plated credentialed editors, well, we'll assign one to work with you who will help you create a detailed outline and blueprint for your book. And once you have that outline, you'll know. You'll either be really excited or not. You'll have tremendous clarity or not. And you'll be in a place to know how a book helps you grow your business to dominate your market. So the two pieces of the Fast Start Author Program are the 2-page book marketing plan and a 4 to 6 page detailed outline. If you're an 8, a 9, or a 10, if it's worth taking action, if it's worth putting a poker chip on the table and exploring authorship and understanding what it can do for you and your business, you will want to enroll in the Fast Start Author Program today. To do these things on your own, it would cost well over $5,000 to find the professionals that are capable of doing this. At Advantage, it's available for a nominal investment of $1,475. The best part is that $1,475 doesn't obligate you to do anything else with us. But if you do decide to do a book, that $1,475 goes as a full credit. And if for any reason through the process we mutually decide that a book does not make sense for you and your business, we'll cheerfully provide our raving fan guarantee and refund every penny of the Fast Start Author Program. I want you to imagine yourself as a professionally published author. I want you to envision the unfair advantages it can create for you and your business. To hypergrow, to dominate, you've got to emulate those top 17,000 CEOs in America. You've got to become a professionally published author, which is what they've done to grow. It's been a pleasure being with you today on today's webinar, sharing these insights. If I or anybody on the Advantage team can be of any help, you can see my contact information directly on the screen. Don't hesitate to reach out to me directly by phone or by email. Thank you for your participation. I wish you